Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today we are discussing the latest Steelers rumors. There's quite a few players out there right now that are getting linked to the black and gold as the Steelers look to put the finishing touches on their 2025 roster. Today we're going to be talking about a number of different players and whether or not I think the Steelers should go pursue those players. But before we get into the content today, do not miss a move that the con artist makes this year, whether it's right before the season, whether it's at the trade deadline. Doesn't matter if there's news on the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of an acquisition or a trade or something like that. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button to never miss a moment surrounding the black and gold for the 2025 season. All right, so let's start here with Packers wide receiver Romeo Doubs. We've talked about quite a bit on this channel during the offseason as a potential wide receiver target, and now some people are starting to speculate that the Green Bay Packers might just end up cutting him from their roster before the start of the season, making him available via waivers for the Steelers to pick up. Christopher Knox from Bleacher Report explains why he thinks Doubs could be on the chopping block there in Green Bay. He says the Green Bay Packers used two of their first three draft picks on wide receivers, taking Matthew Golden and Savion Williams in rounds 1 and 3, respectively. The addition of the youngsters almost certainly means that an incumbent member or two will be out in Green Bay. Assuming the Packers keep 6 wide receivers, which is what they had on their initial 2024 roster, Mecole Hardman, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Malik Heath, Cornelius Johnson, Will Shepard, and Isaiah Nayer could be competing for just 4 roster spots. Of the Packers receivers who could realistically be cut, Doubs is the most noteworthy. He's been an impactful pass catcher at times and has recorded 1,700 yards and 15 touchdowns through 3 seasons. However, he's also struggled with drops, 22 in 43 games, and might not be in Green Bay's long-term plans. Doubs, who is scheduled to be a free agent in 2026, should interest teams with less promising receiver depth. Green Bay would save $3.4 million in cap space by letting him go. So listen, guys, Romeo Doubs has been plagued by drops and injuries in camp this year in Green Bay, which is part of the reason why people are speculating that, with those 4 open roster spots that Green Bay has at the receiver position, that he might not get one of those at the end of this thing, and he might be made available for teams to pick up on waivers when the NFL teams do their roster cuts earlier next week. Plus, Romeo Doubs has had certain issues and behavior issues with the Green Bay Packers in years past. Just last year, he was very upset that he wasn't more involved in the offensive game plans from head coach Matt LaFleur, and he decided not to go to practice one day, so he got suspended. Now, he ended up coming back and finishing the season with Green Bay, but that relationship has already had a couple bumps in the road, and now that they've added all these new players to this wide receiver room, like Matthew Golden, like Savion Williams, these guys that are going to be contributors, there's going to be even less targets and less opportunities for Romeo Doubs in this Packers offense, which I can't imagine he would be too happy about. And if he is cut and the Green Bay Packers do let him go, the Pittsburgh Steelers should 100% capitalize on that opportunity. Omar Khan should be putting in a waiver claim, or he might even want to give Green Bay a call and try to get Romeo Doubs for a 7th round pick just to make sure that they get him because, obviously if he's on waivers, then the Steelers are going to have to put in a claim, and if somebody is ahead of them on the waiver claim order, the Steelers would be missing out on getting Romeo Doubs. But in terms of a player, guys, he's 25 years old, still very young, just heading into his 4th NFL season, brings good size to the table at 6'2", over 200 pounds, is a good run blocker, but he's really known as a big body route running specialist. That's what Aaron Rodgers loved about him when he was coming into the league in 2022. And of course, Rodgers and Doubs had a pretty decent connection there in Green Bay during Doubs' rookie season back in 2022. Now you guys can take a look at the production from Doubs throughout his career. That 2022 season when he was with Rodgers, he had 425 yards receiving on 42 catches and 3 tuds. 2023 was his best year with almost 60 catches, just over 670 yards and 8 touchdowns. And then he took a step backwards last year in 2024, dealt with some injuries as well. But now, there's some people speculating he could be on the chopping block after having kind of a rough training camp mired by injuries and drops there at Green Bay Packers training camp. Now, in terms of his scouting report, guys, I really like his size like we talked about. I think his route running is really good to all three levels. He's a good run blocker. He's played in that Green Bay offense that requires their receivers to run block, just like the Steelers offense. And he does have that established chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, so it would be maybe less of a learning curve for Romeo Doubs than other potential receivers you could bring in here. But some of the cons are, he's had a really tough time with drops, over 20 in 3 years for him, and apparently those drop issues have continued in camp this season. He's also had concussion concerns. He had 2 just last season, and there is some concern that if he gets another one, he might have to retire from football, so that's certainly something that would be a red flag. And then also he was dealing with a back injury at camp this year in Green Bay, and of course we talked about some of the behavior issues, not showing up to practice if he's not involved in offensive game plans, stuff like that. So for a Steelers team that got rid of George Pickens for antics like that, you can make an argument this isn't the best fit in the world from a personality standpoint, but he is a serviceable starting NFL wide receiver that kind of fits what the Steelers would want in a receiver that they would want to bring in here, especially because of that established chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. Some other Packers wide receivers to keep your eye on here that the Steelers might be monitoring: Dontavian Wicks, currently dealing with a knee injury, but I think he's probably going to make the roster at the end of the day. But he's another one of these bigger body route runner types that's a good run blocker that the Steelers might be interested in. And then Will Shepard, the UDFA wide receiver out of Colorado, played with Shadur Sanders there with the Buffaloes last season, and he had a really good college career, and he's a bigger body. He's not the best athlete in the world, but he is somebody that came down with a lot of tough catches for Shadur Sanders last year. I mean, when Shadur got in trouble, he would throw it up to Travis Hunter and Will Shepard, and he would kind of just trust them to come down with contested catches. Shepard really showed off that skill set last year at Colorado, and as somebody that would be a backup X-wide receiver to DK Metcalf, I think he could do a lot worse than Will Shepard here in the Steelers wide receiver room if he's made available, which he's expected to be once roster cutdown days happen next week. But personally, guys, I would think about doing this. I would think about offering a 7th-round pick to the Green Bay Packers and tell them, hey, if you're going to let him go anyways, we'll give you a pick for him, and just to make sure that we can get him, all right? So that's certainly something that I would think about because of the established chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, his fit inside what the Steelers would be wanting out of a wide receiver here, his age, all that stuff comes into play, and for just a 7th-round pick to get a player that might be a starter for you this year, I think would be something that I would consider if I were Steelers GM Omar Khan. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade? Would you trade a 7th-round pick to get Romeo Doubs here in Pittsburgh, or would you maybe try your luck on the waiver wire and not give up that 7th-round pick? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section for today's pinned question. YouTube's going to throw an ad break here in just a couple of seconds, and I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Ethos. When that happens, go down there and give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. And with that, let's have word from our sponsor today at Ethos. And guys, the summer before I started here at Chat Sports, my family lost my late grandfather. And as you tend to do when you lose a loved one, you begin to think about your own mortality and what would happen to the people dependent on you if something were to happen. With today's sponsor, Ethos, my family is protected, and so can yours. Cassie and I are getting married soon, and shortly after that, I imagine we'll buy a house and start having some kids. If something were to happen to me, I want the last thing the people I love to worry about is being able to pay the bills, so I trust Ethos to keep them protected. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There is no complicated process, and it's 100% online. There's no medical exam required, and you just answer a few health questions to get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos today. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily to get your free quote today. A big shout out to Ethos for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So now moving on to some other rumors here. This one from Andrew Filipponi yesterday saying, source, Steelers have done some homework on Patriots wide receiver Jalen Polk. He's likely to get cut in New England. He was the 37th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. An intriguing player to trade a 7th rounder for or claim off of waivers. Stay tuned. So he was a 2nd-round pick for the New England Patriots just last year, guys. 23 years old. A decent size, 6'1", 203 pounds. There's a lot of people that were higher on Polk. Personally, I was lower on him. I had a 4th round downgrade on him, and he really severely disappointed in his rookie season there with the Patriots. A really bad wide receiver room last year, and this year they have more depth. They brought in a lot of new faces, Stephon Diggs. They brought in Kyle Williams out of Washington State, a really highly touted rookie receiver. They brought in Mac Hollins. They brought in Efton Chisholm III, who has had a phenomenal preseason. And there's just not a whole lot of room there for everybody there listed to make the team. I would say probably at least 3 of the receivers listed are going to have to get cut. And I think Jalen Polk, who has not had a great training camp, he did not have a good rookie season last year, is going to make this team. But even though he's going to be available, guys, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I am avoiding Jalen Polk. I do not think he's a good football player, and honestly, I would rather have Robert Woods on this football team or Brandon Johnson on this team than Jalen Polk, who was just absolutely atrocious last year for the New England Patriots, where he had less than 100 yards receiving on just 12 catches and 2 touchdowns. I mean, at least 2 of those 12 catches were touchdowns, but Polk was somebody that was supposed to come onto the scene, make a really bad wide receiver room better, and become one of their mainstay weapons there in New England, and instead, on the worst wide receiver room in the National Football League, he was one of the worst receivers in that room. I mean, it was absolutely incredible to watch him on film and never get open. And then when he did get open, he would drop passes that he would easily make at Washington. So, he just couldn't catch. He couldn't get open. He couldn't do anything right last season. And, apparently, according to the reports on the ground in New England, it's been more of the same in Foxborough this year. So let's just put it this way, guys. Polk had to be benched last year, all right? He got a lot of playing time. He was not getting the football because he couldn't get open. And then when he, like I said, he kept dropping the football as well. And he played so bad that he had to be benched for other bad wide receivers there in New England. And, Polk's failure and Javon Baker's failure as their 2 wide receiver draft picks last year is a big reason why the New England Patriots had the worst wide receiver room in the National Football League. So listen, guys, out of these guys that might get cut or that I think will get cut in New England, I would rather get Kendrick Bourne. He's a longtime veteran. He's played in similar offenses to the Pittsburgh Steelers where they ask their receivers to run block. He's a decent route runner. He's older and he's a diminishing athlete, and he never really was the greatest athlete in the world. But he'd be better than Jalen Polk at this stage, even in his declining state, in my opinion. And now, speaking of Pony, he put out another tweet yesterday where he claims, or actually said it on Pittsburgh radio, where he claimed a former NFL executive told him, all right, how lucky are you there, Pony, that a former exec is giving you this inside information, that the Commanders offered the Pittsburgh Steelers a trade offer for Terry McLaurin, the all-pro wide receiver. And this is what the rumored trade offer was, that the Commanders offered to the Steelers, and apparently the Steelers scoffed at this. All right, a second-round pick next year and Pat Freiermuth in exchange for Terry McLaurin. Of course, the Steelers would be on the hook to give McLaurin a massive new contract extension if this were to go down. But this is what Filippone had to say, that his so-called source had to say about this situation. One thing that I did get thrown out to me by a guy that used to be an assistant general manager in the NFL was the following trade proposal that he thinks Washington floated to the Steelers, and it quickly got shot down. He thinks Washington pushed for this deal, and the Steelers were the ones who, scoffed at it. Okay, so I really highly doubt that Washington offered this, guys. I just don't think that Pony or his so-called source has a really good grasp of the situation there in Washington, because the first thing I'd say about this is Washington knows they need McLaurin. So, and they've been apparently shutting down all trade calls on McLaurin. So why would it make sense that they would offer something to somebody else, right? If they're not engaging in trade talks when people are calling, why would they call the Steelers and make a trade offer for a player that they know they cannot give up this year? You take a look at their wide receiver room this year, guys, and it's a lot of people that maybe you guys haven't heard of before, right? You got Terry McLaurin, who is your number 1, but you take him out. Deebo Samuel's more of a gadget receiver. Noah Brown is dealing with an injury, and he's not fantastic. They got tiny rookie receiver Jalen Lane. Luke McCaffrey is a third-round pick. It's been a massive disappointment. KJ Osborne stinks. Michael Gallup stinks. Chris Moore stinks. This is a bad wide receiver room, guys, and if they get rid of Terry McLaurin in a win-now season where they're trying to win a Super Bowl this year with Jaden Daniels, their chances of going to the Super Bowl and winning one go out the window. So it makes absolutely no sense for the Commanders to want to trade Terry McLaurin away in a deal where they don't get a wide receiver back. Now, they do get a player back, but that's the second thing that I take issue with and why I really doubt the Commanders really gave this trade offer to the Steelers is because they don't need a tight end. They don't need Pat Freiermuth. Why would he be the player that they would want to add in this trade? They like their tight end room right now, guys. Like Zach Ertz, although he's declining and he is getting older, he had a phenomenal bounce-back season with Jaden Daniels last year, and they love him. He's their receiving tight end. Then you got John Bates, who they gave a new 3-year contract to this offseason as their blocking tight end. He's one of the best blockers at the tight end position in the game today. And then they spent a second-round pick just last year on Ben Sinnott, the tight end out of Kansas State, and he's the future at the position. So why would they be interested in bringing in Pat Freiermuth? It just doesn't make sense from the Washington Commanders' perspective. All right, so even though from the Steelers' perspective, second-round pick and Pat Freiermuth to get Terry McLaurin, I'm doing that deal. But there's just no freaking way in hell the Washington Commanders actually called the Steelers and said, we will do this deal. So there's two possibilities here. Number one, this quote-unquote former assistant GM either doesn't exist and Pony made this up, or B, his source isn't aware of Washington's situation and is just talking out of his ass. Either one's possible, but knowing Pony's history, it would not surprise me if it's number one. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade, a second-round pick and Pat Freiermuth in exchange for Terry McLaurin? Personally, I'm pulling the trigger on this deal, and I think the Steelers pull the trigger on this deal. So I don't think the Commanders actually gave this offer to the Steelers. So any reporting out there I think is probably false, but give me an A for accept or D for decline down there in the comments section. And if you guys are tired of the Andrew Filipponi stories today, well, too bad, because he also says that the Steelers are interested in offensive guard Dalton Risner and that they will be bringing him in for a visit at some point here. Andrew Filipponi says this here, the Steelers are reportedly bringing in guard Dalton Risner for a visit. 10 starts on a very good Vikings team in 2024. No penalties, no sacks allowed, 13th rated pass blocking guard per PFF. He's better than Mason McCormick. Sign him. And then yesterday, Jeremy Fowler put this out yesterday regarding Risner, says free agent guard Dalton Risner, who worked out for the Bengals today, will also visit the Seahawks per source. Visiting the Steelers, also a consideration. Wants to take multiple visits before making a decision. So, Dalton Risner, decent starting capable player at the offensive guard position. He's just turned 30 years old. Brings good size to the table for a guard. 81 career starts, so a ton of starting experience in this league. And he's played mostly left guard in his career, but he did start 8 games at right guard in 2024 for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, he had his ups and downs last year with Minnesota. His pass protection, although he wasn't credited with any sacks last year, he did give up quite a few pressures for the Minnesota Vikings. He did not play well in the postseason game versus the Los Angeles Rams. He definitely wasn't perfect for the Minnesota Vikings last year. And you can compare him to the current starting right guard option for the Pittsburgh Steelers here in Mason McCormick. And you can see that Risner was the better player compared to Mason McCormick last year. Now, keep in mind, McCormick was a rookie that was moving over from left guard to right guard, and he was transitioning from a very lower level of college football to the NFL level. So give McCormick maybe a little bit of slack there. But Risner last year, in terms of the PFF grading, was the overall better player. And some people might argue, hey, if he's an upgrade, let's bring him in a win now season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I'm not going to lie, guys, I was a little surprised by this one, that not only is Risner interested in coming to the Steelers, but the Steelers also have enough interest in him to bring him in for a visit sometime, within the next 2 weeks or so. And my question when it comes to this, guys, is would Pittsburgh sign Risner to start, or would it be as a depth piece? Would they bring him in to replace Mason McCormick? Is this team starting right guard so close to the start of the 2025 NFL season? I mean, it's certainly a possibility. You guys can take a look at his career PFF grades here. Pretty decent player, but certainly nothing stellar. He never finished a season with a 70 or higher PFF grade, so that is very middle of the pack, nothing necessarily too special. Now, where he's better is in the pass blocking area, where he has finished over 70 in multiple seasons there. He has been known more as a pass blocking type of offensive guard, and just last year, a 76.2 PFF grade as a pass blocker, but then, he's just not a very good run blocker, guys, and he really never has been. You guys can see the run block blocking grades are significantly less. And for a team here in Pittsburgh where you're going to be wanting your offensive linemen to be able to run block and you're going to want these guys to be able to do that at a high level, Dalton Risner's not that type of guy. So I'm a little bit surprised that the Steelers are showing interest in Dalton Risner, especially because Mason McCormick is showing you some good things in camp. I mean, all the reports for McCormick in camp is that he's been looking good. Aaron Rodgers has been talking about him pretty favorably in what he's been able to do in camp and then also in these preseason games. He has a PFF grade in these preseason games over 80 right now. So, like, I understand that McCormick's a young player. He's unproven, all this stuff, and Risner's got a little bit more of an established presence in this league. But, like, McCormick is a guy that could be a long-term option for you here at the right guard position. And I'm really questioning whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers are really going to give up on Mason McCormick as a potential right guard option for them this year because, like, the run blocking grade hasn't looked great so far in the preseason, guys. And the overall grade is only sitting at a 60 in the limited snaps that he's had in the preseason. But an 84.4 pass blocking grade, that's pretty freaking good to start the preseason. And, the reports coming out of camp is that he's actually been pretty good as a run blocker as well, pairing up with Troy Fautano on the right side of the Steelers' offensive line. So I really didn't think the Steelers were going to be in the market for an offensive guard that probably wants to start here in Pittsburgh. But, I really am all for adding Risner if he's going to be coming in as a depth piece or, if McCormick really isn't playing well, I'm all for bringing in Risner to be this team's starting right guard. Like, he's a fine player. There's nothing wrong with Dalton Risner. He's a high floor type of starting offensive guard option, but I would hope that Mason McCormick is ready to take on that mantle this year, and if he's not, I guess bring him in. But it's definitely a little bit of a head scratcher to me because I was under the impression that Mason McCormick was going to be this team's starting right guard this year. So pick your right guard for me down there in the comments section. If you had a choice between Mason McCormick or Dalton Risner, which guy are you taking? Type MM for Mason McCormick or type DR for Dalton Risner. For me, I'm going to go with Mason McCormick right now. Now, I'm not in the building there. I don't know what the coaches are feeling about Mason. Maybe they feel like they need to bring in Dalton Risner and give McCormick another year to develop before he can be a starter here in Pittsburgh. But, based on everything I've been seeing on the film and everything that we've been hearing from camp, I think McCormick's ready. 100% on board bringing in Risner as a backup. That would be awesome if he's willing to take on that type of role. But personally, I want to see what Mason McCormick can do at right guard this season. All right, that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Rumors. Thank you guys so much for sticking around here to the end of today's program. We're going to be going live tomorrow for the Steelers Talk Live watch party for the preseason finale versus the Carolina Panthers. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. We'll be putting out a preview video out early tomorrow. So make sure you click that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you know when those two videos come out tomorrow.